Let's now look at version 2. So under the same projects, exception to handle or not to handle, you will see the version 2 package. So we got version 2, all the source code already available for you. I'm not going to develop from scratch again, but I'm going to go over the points, the highlights together with you to make sure you understand the difference from other versions. Okay, let's now go over the difference quickly. We still got the same classes, A, B, and also tester. So now the only difference is as follows. Compare with version number 1, for example. So you can see here, let me just use this green. Okay, you can see this OA.ma. Again, A.ma is where the error actually got reported as an exception, right? So this is, again, to remind you, this is in the context of A.ma. So A.ma. So this is actually where the exception is originated. So exception thrown. Right? Don't forget it's the throw keyword over here, right? Okay, this is where the exception is thrown. And for version number 2, for the caller of A.ma, which is B.mb, right? That's a caller of A.ma. For this caller here, rather than choosing to catch the exception, remember the catch or specify requirements. So now we will choose to specify it. Okay, so the callee throws an exception, but in the caller B.mb, we choose to specify it. And how do we specify the exception? We use the throws keyword as part of the header, right? That's something we went over earlier. So that'll be as part of the header, we'll say throws negative value exception. So the consequence, which is very important. So the consequence is simply the caller of B.mb, which chooses to specify the exception. Caller of B.mb will be forced to either catch the exception or specify the exception. Again, it's facing the you need to satisfy the catch or specify requirements. To either catch or specify the negative value exception, right? Over here. Either catch or specify. And for this particular version, we'll show you the version where the caller will choose to catch it. And exactly how? Let's see that. To catch it, you can see we got the try and catch block. Here, you can see ob.mb over here. This is the method call. Okay, let me just do a little bit better. Okay, so this is the method call, and this is a callee. Specifies that negative value exception may be thrown. That's why we have to handle that either by that means we need to either catch it or specify it. May be thrown. Right? You can see this is how we catch it. Right? Let me just highlight it over here. So that'll be the try and also catch block. And what's the consequence? The consequence once we try and catch over here. So let me just put the consequence over here. Well, let me use a different color so you can distinguish. So the consequence is, since we are already reaching the entry point of execution, which is tester.main, so that means there will be no further caller in the call stack. This is already the bottom of the call stack. Consequence, the negative value exception will not be thrown to the console. It's being handled just right over here. All right, so that's the conceptual idea you should really want to convince yourself. All right, let me now go over the call stack very quickly over here, and then I will show you on the Eclipse quickly by using debugger. Okay, so this is where the error was originated in A.MA. It's propagated to B.MB, and B.MB chooses to propagate it further using the specify option. So you'll be propagated further to tester domain, and here in tester domain, we are facing the same choice between specify or require. Specify or catch, and in this case, we choose to catch it, right? So that's why it will be handled in the same method over here, try and catch block, without being propagated further. It's not the case. All right, so that's a quick summary about what version 2 is about. Let's now take a look at the source code. I'll show you what you should do by using the Eclipse debugger to see the execution flow. It's really, really crucial. Let me switch to debugger over here. So under version number 2, let me just go directly to tester. You can look into the source code. I also got some comments there for you. You can also read them over. Okay. What I will do is I'm going to put, right, this is where we actually catch the exception in the tester domain, right, which I just explained. I'm going to put a breakpoint here right before executing ob.mb, right before that. Okay, let me now try to launch the debugger, debug tester. But since we got actually 3 versions of the tester, if you're a little bit unsure, if you want to be really sure that you're really executing, you're really debugging the correct version of tester, I would suggest you do the following. Let me close version 1, close version 2, close version 3. Right click on this particular tester and say debug as Java application. Debug as, yes, Java application, yes. And then, so that'll be a saver to make sure you're really debugging the correct version. Java application, okay, let's not worry about this line as usual. And then let's now enter some negative value, which will trigger some error. If I say -10, for example, if I say -10, I'm going to switch to the debug perspective. Okay, so now I'm in the debug perspective. So now I'm here, ob.mb. Let me do several runs. For the first run, let me not step into. I'll step over. So what's going to happen? Because I is currently -10, right? And then I can expect the exception to be eventually happen from A.MA, right? The call lead in 2 levels up in the call stack. So ob.mb is going to trigger some negative value exception. So that means the normal flow will be interrupted, right? I want you to review again this particular notes over here about normal flow versus abnormal flow. It's actually very important for you to review. Okay. So now in this case, what I will do is if I say step over, where should I go? Would I actually go ahead to do the catch block? Or would I simply, well, since this is already the last line for the try block, so there's nothing else to be executed, well, would I just go for the normal flow, bypass catch block, and go for the last line over here, right? Think about it. Well, apparently we should really go to the catch block, right? Because the exception will be thrown. So if I say step over, right, exactly, I go into the catch block over here, right? So there'll be system, the other print line, and then from tester main, tester.main negative value, right? So this shows to you where the exception was actually caught and handled. But we'll go over that as well for the second run, right? So now we go into the catch block, and then if I say step over, you can see this is a console message. Remember this message here. We'll see that again, and then we execute the rest of the program, and now we are done. All right, that's the first run to show you. Let me stop it. Let me launch the debugger once more. And then I'm going to enter -10 again, return. All right. Now I'm here. So I want to step into this time, right? If I say step into over here, so I'm now under B.MB, right? So let me just remind you where you are. So we are now actually here. So we started with tester domain, and then we try to call B.MB. So this is where we are. When we step into here, we'll get to A.MA, right? So we just build the call stack, right? That's the first step before the exception is thrown. All right, so now we create A.MA, and like this. Okay, let's now say this. I here is actually -10. So we know that it will trigger some negative value exception from A.MA, right? But you can see in this case, we don't have any try and catch block. That means we're actually going to propagate this exception over here to its caller. So you can see this is where we are, B.MB. Eventually, when the exception is thrown from a.ma, we're actually going to propagate it further to tester.main rather than catching it as in version 1, right? So what I will do is I'm simply just going to step into, okay? If I say step into, I'm now in a.ma over here, right? a.ma. You can see a.ma, because I is strictly less than 0, it is actually minus 10. So if I say step over, I'm now here. So I will throw the negative value exception. That's what's going to happen. Before I click on step over, let's now predict what's going to happen. Let's switch back to the notes. So remember, we are now talking about version 2 still. Okay, what's going to happen is a.ma is where the error, the exception was originated. And remember what I said before, just remind you again. You don't actually try to catch the exception where it is thrown. You don't really do that. So usually in the method where the exception is originated, you typically will just choose the specify option. Just remember that, okay? So what's going to happen is this exception is originated over here because the method specifies it. So you'll be propagated to the next caller, which will be b.mb. And b.mb, as we saw, that one will also specifies it. And that will be propagated further. So now we get to tester.main. And that one there will choose to catch it. In that case, it will simply be handled in the same method without being propagated further. So that's what's going to happen, right? Let's now try to see. And again, as soon as I say step over, this exception is going to be propagated 1 and also 2. The intermediate step over here is not going to be shown in Eclipse, unfortunately. So that's why I want to show it to you. Okay, and at this point you can see the call stack starting from tester.main, b.mb, a.ma, right? That's also something we spoke about very many times already. Okay, let me say step over. As soon as I say step over, notice what the call stack is going to change, right? If I say step over, you can see we go all the way to just tester.main. As I said, when the exception is propagated to here, because that one does not try to catch it, so that's why it will be propagated further. So that's why this intermediate point is not being shown in the Eclipse. So it will be as if we went directly to just this method, which will be the first one in the call stack that will actually catch the exception, right? So that's why in the Eclipse we'll show the context is switched to tester.main over here, and we'll try to catch the exception. And if I say I can say step over, or step into, and then I don't need to say step into actually. So I can say step return, and then I can say step over, and then I'm done. All right. So that's about version number 2. It's really important for you to, first of all, to convince yourself what's really going on. How do you compare version 2 against version 1? What's really the crucial difference? And consequently, it's going to make the runtime behavior in terms of propagating the exception from the call stack in a different way. It's really important for you to understand that. All right, so let's now move on to this last version to see what's going to be the difference.